Solano360 is the Solano County Fairgrounds property off of Highway 80 in the city of Vallejo. So the first item on our agenda is public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on matters that are not listed on this particular agenda. And just to let you know that there will be another opportunity for you to comment once we receive the proposal. Correct? I'm looking at Nancy. Yeah, okay. All right. So if there's anybody in the audience, on the phone, or online that would like to comment on items that are not on this agenda, now's your opportunity.
And I believe we only have one member who is to speak on the item, Jason.
Okay. All right, great. With that, we'll move on to approve. Oh, should we do roll call? Okay. I'm just diving into it. We'll go ahead and do, I noticed everybody was here, but we'll do this for the record.
Supervisor Spearing, Councilmember Dew, Mayor McConnell, and Chairwoman Hannigan.
Here, thank you. So we'll move on to item number 2, approval of the attached minutes. Hope you've all had a chance to look at the minutes from our last meeting. Any questions? We have a move to approve from Mayor McConnell, a second from Supervisor Spearing. We'll do a roll call vote.
Supervisor Spearing, Councilmember Dew, yes. Mayor McConnell, and Chairwoman Hannigan.
Yes.
So ordered by a 4-0 vote.
Okay. All right, so then we'll move on to item number 3, receiving a presentation from the IRG team on our proposed land plan. Alicia, you want to read that?
Receive a presentation by IRG team on the proposed land plan and land uses for the Solano360 project at the Solano County Fairgrounds site in Vallejo, and consider taking action on the following. Consider endorsement of the IRG proposed land plan and land uses as the basis for future entitlement applications and other supporting documents to implement the Solano360 project, and consider approval of a milestone schedule for submitting and processing entitlement applications for approvals by Solano County and the City of Vallejo.
Thank you, Ms. Draves. Nancy Houston.
Yes, just good afternoon, chairs and Chair Hannigan, as well as members of the Implementation Committee. I just want to briefly introduce the team for you today. My name is Nancy Houston, the Assistant County Administrator. With me is Tom Sinclair from Management Advisory Services, which is the county consultant on the project. I also have behind me Bernadette Curry, Brigetta Corsello, and Bill Emlin. And who's working with us right now is Alan Calder, our principal manager that's working on the project as well. So I want to mention him as well. And with the city, we have Paul Kelly with the Economic Development Department, and I believe Gillian Hayes will call in later today from the city of Vallejo. So I want to mention that. And then with us today, we have actually 3 folks from the IRG team. We have obviously Justin Lichter from IRG. We have Rex Carpenter from IRG, and we have Mike Lindenlaub from Village Development Company, who'll be making the presentation today. So we're very happy to have them here. They've come from different directions to be here today. And so with that, we are going to have a presentation from them today, and then after that, we're going to talk about some actions for this committee. So thank you. With that, Mike.
Latest iteration of a very exciting plan. And so, Alicia, next slide, please. I wanted to kind of just revisit the guiding principles of the specific plan. I'll do this quickly. I know that you hear me repeat this every time, and I know it's near and dear to your hearts, but I think it's important for all of us here to really understand what these guiding principles are, because that's what we live by as we push this plan forward and look at all the opportunities that we can incorporate into the site. So, generate revenues for Solano County and the City of Vallejo, create jobs and ensure long-term economic sustainability. And we've paraphrased that to say that jobs and economic sustainability. The second one is establish a unique place with an unmistakable identity that serves as a destination for visitors as well as pedestrian-friendly community gathering place. So really a sense of place. The third one is explore a mix of complementary land uses, including retail, commercial, hospitality, recreational, residential, family, and youth-oriented educational and civic uses that seamlessly integrate with fair of the future, diverse balance of uses. Excuse me. The fourth, explore increased physical connectivity and synergy with Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, downtown Vallejo, the waterfront, and other existing commercial operations, synergy with the community. Fifth, provide pedestrian, bicycle, vehicular, and transit facilities that foster access to, from, and within the site. Pedestrian friendly. And really, this is really connectivity. Probably should have reworded that, but that refers to how the site is connected. And finally, the sixth important specific plan guiding principle is to incorporate sustainable and green principle in all aspects of development. So environmental sustainability. And there's another one that's important to us, and that's this whole concept of wellness. That's sort of what we call the new lead. And so rest assured that this whole wellness component is something that is very important to us, and its integration within the site. Alicia? So when we left you last, we presented what we call Plan 1. And we spoke about all of the different product components that we see as viable on the site. And we talked about the three things that we call site activators, because as much as we think that all of these things are going to work on the site, for the site to be its most economically advantageous, we need to get the site going with what we call site activators. And those three site activators were neighborhood commercial with residential component, the makerspace, and film studios with a possible backlot. We feel like those are the three product types that are in need right now, at least to some level, and that once we put those on the site, it's going to activate the site, the notoriety of the site, the appeal of the site, and then we can come back in later phases and add the rest of these product types, which we'll go over in just a moment. So that was Plan 1. You gave us some really terrific feedback the last time we met, and that brings us to Plan 2. Alicia? Next slide, please. So just by looking at Plan 2, you can begin to see that it is similar to what we've had in the past. And I might point out that the specific plan did a really great job of overall planning the site with the many features. And what we've tried to do is maximize the benefits of what was in the specific plan with product that we know is going to work here and in the future. Next slide, please. And this is just a different orientation. So the last slide was north was up, and this side north is to the left, with Six Flags to the bottom part of the slide, and then the Highway 80 is to the north, or the upper part of the slide. And you can see that what we've illustrated here, and we'll talk about a little bit more, is some distinct water features, and we've got some good ideas on how that's going to play into the site. And then really how the site orients with a main street in the middle that we think is going to connect well to the activities at Six Flags. And so we'll speak more about this as we get into the next slides. Next, please. And so just to kind of take a look at that. So in the upper left, we have the existing hotel by way of orientation. That's the Courtyard by Marriott. And then coming around clockwise, we have what we're proposing as a site activator, and that's the studio sound stages. Now you can begin to see the difference between this plan and the previous plan, where our road sequence is a little bit more, shall we say, user-friendly. It's a little bit more attractive. We've put medians in. We're proposing, landscaped roundabouts, things that kind of slow the traffic down, activate the site and the connectivity of people on the site and within the site. Coming around, we have the commercial office. And then the heart and soul, we think of the site as this maker space and this maker village. And we're going to talk again more about these in just a moment. We have this park with this terrific water feature. And then we've added this thing called the open air annex at the end of the main street, which visually as you're coming up Main Street is this kind of open air building that we think is going to serve many terrific features, including functions for the fair, different kinds of functions for the community, but also things like a farmer's market. It might even be places where we have concerts. We think it really supports the field house quite nicely. It's an iconic piece, and we're very excited about it. Again, that's our Main Street, where to the upper part of the Main Street is our makerspace that activates the site. And then to the lower part of the Main Street in this slide, or the south part of Main Street, is more of our traditional entertainment retail. We've got another water feature that connects to the main water feature, some neighborhood retail, some residential with some mixed-in neighborhood retail. And again, the field house stays where it's always been on the right side of that plan up against the I-80. So we think that the site has evolved quite nicely. These are all very useful and purposeful land uses that we think integrate well and really create a very nice community. Next, please. So I wanted to kind of explore with you a little bit some of the other components outside of the land uses. And those really we've divided into the water and the nature and the pedestrian connection. Next, please. So let's talk about the water and the nature component first. Next, please. So we have this idea, and we call it the California water sequence. And what we like about it is that it really begins to tell a story, and it connects the guest and the visitor to the site, or the resident on the site, or somebody that works on the site, with what this water feature is, because we don't want just water there for the sake of water being there, or any feature on the site just for the sake of it being there. You know, in our first presentation, when we prevailed at the RFP, we spoke about the reason why, and this begins to answer some of that. Why are we doing these things? And so we thought about this idea about the California water sequence. And in summary, it's this. Our water is snow-packed in the Sierras, and then it comes down through the creeks and streams. And if you pay attention to some of this iconography, we're going to come back to it as we begin to build out our site. So the snowpack and the creeks and the streams, and then it gets contained in our Great California reservoirs, and we use that for power, and it comes over the dams, and then it goes into our canals and gets distributed through the state. And then over those rivers and streams and canals, we've got these really great iconic bridges. And then some of that water flows out into the Delta, where we've got these really iconic images of great buildings and things like that. So we think it's something that can really be played up on, and we think it's just an exciting story. And we take it beyond just these features that maybe mimic some of these great features, but really an opportunity to explain to the visitor what's going on and how this relates to California and really what it's all about. Next, please. And so again, you saw the natural setting of those components of the California water feature, and this is how we might be able to create it. So for example, you have the creek stream coming into what we would call the reservoir. And maybe we have this sort of dam, if you will, that flows over into the canal system. And so these are examples of the way that might work to justify a great water feature that really relates to people. And I can just imagine walking through the makerspace, for example, and seeing a creek, and you don't so much as take it for granted, but maybe there's a plaque that says, you know, that this mimics the California aqueduct system, and this is how that system works, and this is when it was built, and this is why it was built, and these are the opportunities and everything that's come from that. So we just think that it's a really terrific opportunity. And of course, what a wonderful experience to be able to grab something from a makerspace, have that experience, go grab something to eat, and go down to this water feature. We just think it's just really a terrific opportunity. Next, please. And our pedestrian connections is important. And this is walking, strolling, running, cycling, which is very important, near and dear to my heart as being a cyclist, to really plan this properly and really encourage the wellness on the site. You know, we want to kind of evoke a mood that says that you can learn something about walking and exploring, and you're encouraged to go to the next step. So maybe you're going to take that extra walk around the loop because the last time you did that, you learned something, and you want to learn something different on this walk. Next, please. And what we envision is really a dedicated, cycling trails, properly done, because we'd love to encourage people to cycle on the site, and we think that they're going to do it if it's a safe place that they can cycle. And there's great bicycle racks, and again, the great signage and the discovery points that encourage people to stop and read and understand about what's going on. You know, and then we even thought about, well, maybe we pay homage to the fairgrounds and that old racetrack that was once there, and some of the things that might have happened on that racetrack here at this very point. And then we envision these great urban gardens, and we love this exercise component where sort of here and there around the site, you're encouraged to participate and to exercise a bit. We just think it's really great. So it's not a static sidewalk or a static trail as much as it's this kind of discovery element. I love the mileage signage, which says that.
I was just going to say, I mean, this has been one of the things I've thought about. You have all this opportunity to have this walking trail that should be mileaged. I think that it should be cited in terms of mileage. I see Pippin and I are both like, yeah.
Yeah, now we're gonna have
We
to say
like to
yardage, because
walk.
I'm not sure we got miles here, but exactly. Next, please. And I just want to point out some of the elements and some of the features, because I think it's difficult for us to put together an image that shows where these buildings are going to go, shows where the parks and the walkways are, without having the benefit of being able to show you detail in something that is this large. But you know, Rex has envisioned some really terrific ideas, and Rex can speak to some of this stuff. But really changing up the paving, so that as you're in one part of the parcel and you're crossing maybe a street to go to the other part, take for example the makerspace, that the paving feels the same. So we'll be mixing things up so that it really begins to kind of encourage this pedestrian access and again this discovery throughout. And we feel like that really connects the spaces, because we've got to get across roads. We can't do without what we think are the necessary roads for loading and for parking and the like. So we think it's important. The other thing that we've added is perpendicular parking in some of these streets, which, as Rex has pointed out, will slow the traffic down. It really encourages this kind of really slow procession. It widens our streets so that when we have functions, it'll serve that purpose as well. So we just think that's a terrific idea to really kind of slow the pace down on site. So we like that. We envision this makerspace, and we've got some imagery, and I think you've seen it in the past, but really kind of this California landscape and this sort of DG paving, if you will. And again, these outcrops where you can go and sit by a fireplace or play bocce ball, all while you're in this discovery space and this maker space, learning about what's there and exploring and discovering the new vendor that might be there, or the new tenant that has just moved into the maker space. So we think it's a great opportunity. And I do want to speak a little bit more about the maker space in just a moment. Landscaped medians in the street. So again, really kind of creating this great landscape and this great pedestrian-friendly environment within the site. Next, please. Again, we've got this idea on the lower part of the site now for these kind of walk-up townhomes where we'll have parking perhaps that's accessed from the back, but in the front, these are close up to the street. It creates this really great neighborhood feel as you walk up to these multi-story townhomes. This is a product that's greatly in demand. We think that they're wonderfully attractive. They create a sense of community and a sense of family, which we think is terrific. So we think that those are a great addition to what we call our multifamily component within the site. We've also added in and anticipate to the residential component some neighborhood retail. So we don't envision this to be sort of all standalone, isolated residential, as much as we might on the lower part of this and mixed in have a coffee shop or a dry cleaner, things that are convenient to that part of the site for the neighborhood and for the multifamily residential. Next, please. Can you go back one slide, Alicia? I'm sorry. I wanted to point out also that the hotel we think is a very strategic location. As we build the hotel and we put in the conference and convention space, then now we have this great conference and convention space. We've got the field house. We've got the annex building. It becomes really this great sort of ground zero for function space, for concerts, for sporting events. It's bigger than just the field house now, and it's divisible. So somebody can take one component without taking the other component, but it's also large enough and expandable enough where you can have a larger concert or a festival, if you will. So we just think that it works really great. The catering from the hotel that works with the field house, that works with the annex building. We can imagine that part of Main Street where you close it off and it's a farmer's market, or it's a festival, or that whole part of the site going all the way up to the north to the lake and all the way down is the fair. We take up that parking lot. It just becomes this really great flexible venue, not only for functions, but also for community services. So we love it as really the heart and soul, if you will, if we may be so bold as to say, of Vallejo. This is the place where people are going to come to do things, to learn things, to collaborate. We just think it becomes this really great heart and soul of the neighborhood. Next, please.
Before you do that, on housing, we purposely inserted different types of housing, different places. So One thing Mike didn't talk about is in the Maker Village, we're also considering some housing components that would be loft, like an artist, loft housing, in an effort to really get a diverse, population there. So you've got townhomes that invite families, that might have space for kids. You've got traditional apartments, down at the bottom of this slide that, might be the singles or just starting out. And then you've got the artist, kind of, live work space housing, and the housing goes top to bottom now in the plan. And I think that was one of the comments we heard early on is let's don't have all the housing here and this here and this here, but can we blend this plan? So we really made an effort to try to pull those different kinds of housing, different opportunities for the different types of population, so that we could create a diverse neighborhood, all in this community.
Yeah, thanks, Rox. Next, please. And so we have these slides that we get excited about called Influence of Style, where we begin to look at some of the architecture and some of the legacy architecture in the area and some of the design schemes. And we really try to incorporate that within our design so that we create this sense of place. Next, please. And so this happens to be a building on Mare Island. You're familiar with the Marine Barracks on Mare Island. I just love that lighthouse image that we found. That's a Main Street in Vacaville, I think. The old C&H building across the Delta. Of course, the Nut Tree Inn, which I just think is just going to be terrific in terms of its feel and its appeal and how we take advantage of what that was. And so there's really a lot to work with here when we begin to think about our architecture. And so I wanted to share with you some of what we envision for how that front of house, that what we call that front-facing architecture, is beginning to plan out. Next, please. And again, we just love the patina. Again, those are buildings on Mare Island, lower right. But some of that old patina, aged metal, corrugated metal, and if you look at the scale, and if you look at the awnings, again, sort of this front-facing, if you will, architecture is something that we want to at least let this influence our thoughts a little bit to create a sense of place and a sense of character. Next, please. And so, sorry for the resolution, but this begins to think about, how some of that stuff might play out. And so, this is again what we call retail front-facing makerspace. And so, what's going on behind this makerspace are that these people are actually creating, distributing some of their wares. It gives them an opportunity to come and create things and then connect through a retail environment. Frankly, we think it's the move forward for retail. So instead of this isolated, standalone, highly expensive retail, which only very few people can afford and which is on the downslide, we think that this is the way it should be, that people can actually come and make these bespoke products that you can't get online in bulk, but that they can really share the uniqueness of this. And so this makerspace does that. We know it's in demand, and we know it creates this real sense of a unique sense of place. And we just envision how this might work with the community, within what we call the Maker Village. Next, please. And this is kind of an idea of the Main Street. And so if our maker in this vision is to the left, this comes across our Main Street. And apologies, we didn't get to put in some of our parking. Maybe that's behind us on plan here. But then on the right would be our more traditional entertainment type retail. Next, please. And again, that open air annex building, that's kind of one example of the way that might look if we tie it into some of the architecture of the makerspace. But really things that are open and flow with the water features. We think that it starts to flow and work really nicely. Rex, any comments on what your thoughts are on some of this?
Well, we tried to do treat the water the same way as we did the population. We wanted to give people, an intimate, personal encounter with the water where, if you're in a makerspace and you have a glass of wine, you can sit on the edge and listen to the fountain, and it's personal. And then a group where the larger space around the restaurants, you might have a band stand, or you might have, a night where you create a fountain that you project on, some of the things we're doing now with water features. That really becomes more of a community piece And then you've got the passive piece with the lake and a place where you could throw your quilt and have a picnic or just kind of, be beside the water as well. So, we took a lot of what people said about the water. We've been around and around and around on the water. How do you do it right? And I think now we've got it to where we're really have these kinds of encounters that are all a little different, can be what you want it to be. It's not one thing. You're not trying to make one thing. It really pervades the whole neighborhood and becomes part of what makes this a place.
One of the details is that number 4 on the side of the building. We think it is really cool, that this has legacy, this has history, this has patina. This is a place that something else used to happen here, and it's just evolved, and it always was here. And I think that's the cool part of this thing. And each one of these buildings perhaps takes on a different character. So we're just really excited about the way that this can unfold. Next, please. And this is sort of that dynamic feature, perhaps the hotel across that water feature that really comes up on the water and relates well to the water. And this is, one of those opportunities that Rex mentioned where we could have, things going on, that there's always something scheduled or nothing scheduled, and you just come and throw out a blanket and have a meal and just really enjoy the environment. So excited about the way this is all unfolding. Next, please. And this gets down to our multifamily component. You can see the idea of these walk-up townhomes and these walk-up multifamily apartments, where we've actually brought them up closer to the street. Perhaps the conventional wisdom was to kind of set them back with park space, but we love this idea. I think Alan Calder mentioned that, if we bring them up, we begin to kind of create this kind of intimacy, this closeness, and it feels great. And then we can access the parking, if you will, from the back where you don't really see it. So we just love the way that this relates well to the street, and again, creates that pedestrian access. Next, please. And so quickly, I'm going to just go through as a reminder, but the film studios are studio sound stages. We've had very good conversations. The way that this works is that we build the facilities, and those facilities are then leased out on a short-term or a long-term basis to any number of production companies, from high-end Hollywood films to, television shows. And what we think is a really great opportunity is the entire kind of social media environment where people are creating their own content. There's a huge need for that, where these studios can be split up into smaller components to satisfy that need for the individual that needs some smaller production space. We also think that given the size and scale of these spaces, that again, it encourages other things, right? So function space, if you will, that kind of complements some of these other venues that I mentioned. And it meets at least 3 components of the specific plan: jobs and economic sustainability, diverse balance of uses, and synergy with the community. Next, please. The makerspace we've spoken about, and we think that meets, 6 of the 6, right? Jobs and economic sustainability, a sense of place, diverse balance of uses, synergy with the community, pedestrian friendly, and environmentally sustainable. I think that the synergy with the community is probably the most important component as far as we're concerned. I think that the ability for anybody in the community to come and get space and create their own wares and market their own wares and be completely unique from anything you might see anywhere else is a huge opportunity. And a couple of things that we didn't talk about, and there's so much to talk about as we work on this plan and really get into it, but there's this kind of library component that we envision for the site. But we don't just call it a library, we call it a library discovery center. And so you go into the library and you discover something that is to be discovered in the library, but then what if you were to come out and learn how to make beer in the makerspace or learn how to make a bicycle in the makerspace? What if the whole thing could be kind of this element of discovery, and we encourage the tenants that are in this space to really teach us about what they're doing, about what their craft is. We just think that there's great opportunities to really incorporate the community activity within the space. Next, please. Of course, our neighborhood retail meets 5 of the 6: jobs and economic sustainability, sense of place, diverse balance of uses, synergy, and pedestrian friendly, and probably 6 of the 6 because we would incorporate the environmental sustainability as well. Next, please. The commercial, the entertainment retail, at the right time and place, and we spoke about this the last time we were here, we're going to attract the right entertainment retail. We think that this happens in phase 2. We don't think that it happens in phase 1 because we don't want to go out too early and attract the wrong kind of tenancy and the wrong kind of balance for the site. We think that once we energize the site, we create some excitement and a sense of destination for the site, it's going to be much easier to go out and attract the right entertainment retail tenant for that space. So we believe that we energize the site with the site activators, and then we come back in and we find the right entertainment retail tenants. And again, it meets 5, probably again 6 of the 6, because we would be environmentally sustainable as well. Next, please. Commercial office, again, we have this in later phases, but by the way, not to say that if we couldn't find the right use, the right tenancy, or get some activity and some pre-leasing. And I actually think that once we go out there and we start to get people excited about the site and what else is happening on the site, that this might be a use that gets moved up in time. But it probably does happen in phase 2 or 3. And we think it's going to be a useful, necessary component to the site. And by the way, what a great place to work, right? So we've got all the maker space as a great place to work. We've got all the studios as a great place to work. We've got all the entertainment retail as a great place to work. But this is more of our office. We envision it more of a creative office type environment that is going to be necessary at some point on the site. And again, we spoke about the field house, and we just think that there are all kinds of opportunities. It's going to serve a very useful, purposeful, and thoughtful venue for the fair. It's going to allow the fair to grow and think about what the objectives are for the fair of the future. You know, we look forward to working with the fair to make sure that we define what the fair of the future means and what the opportunities are, but to build the right venue to encourage those uses going forward. And again, just as a reminder, the field house serves all of those fair functions, but it also serves as, tournament sporting events. It serves for concerts. It serves for lectures. It serves for all of the community functions that are going on right now, including the vaccinations or anything else that you might have going on site. We just think it's a great kind of heart and soul of the community. Next, please. And again, this is one of those other ideas for the annex building. And this is we love this picture. This is the Eastern Marketplace in Detroit. This is what we're talking about when we say an open building. Again, it's obvious that it serves this use for the fair, but it also serves so many other functions. And we think that it's a great iconic feature to be at the end of the main street and really sort of be an invitation. You might even have sort of constant marketplaces going on with different kinds of things happening within the space. Architecturally, it can be really kind of spectacular and kind of cool. It's a roof with some pillars, and so we're excited about what the opportunities are for this open air annex. Next, please. And again, the hotel, again, probably not justified in phase 1 or phase 2, but certainly once we activate the site, we're going to be, wishing we had this sooner. And we envision this to be probably what we call a soft brand, which is something that's branded but really takes on this character of the site. And again, we just think that it's going to provide its own opportunities in terms of its functions, in terms of its ability to cater the balance of the site. And so it's a necessary component. It's going to complement the hotel that's already existing near the site. And we're going to get the right number of rooms between the two hotels for what's happening on the site, including the functions moving forward. Next, please. And finally, our multifamily residential, which we spoke about. So, more traditional market rate apartments, but then some of those townhomes, and then some of the kind of, creative live work environments that we spoke about earlier. Next, please. We've also reserved a place on site for what we call a feature attraction. And again, this is one of those things that I think we get the site activated. Again, not to say that we won't go out immediately and try to find this user, but I think that once we get the site activated and we create some excitement to the site, this is when we go out to a Top Golf or an Andretti karting or something like that, and we bring them into the site as kind of a complement to the site. But I have to tell you, I wouldn't think about this as the exciting driver to the site. Everything else that's going on around the site, that main street, that maker space, things that are happening at the field house is going to create such a sense of destination for the site that this is really just kind of the icing on the cake, if you will. So excited that we have this opportunity to add this. We'd love to get these folks in there. We think we can. We know we can. But we want to do it at the right time, and we want to do this strategically. Next, please. Yeah.
Did you say what phase that was you're proposing that it would fall? 2? Oh, there it is. Thank you.
I'm glad it's up because I
Yeah,
couldn't-
me
I couldn't
too.
remember.
That made it easy.
I couldn't remember. But this is what we are proposing as our max density for the site. I think we shared this with you the last time. And in terms of how it's phased, I say 1+, 3+, meaning that it's going to happen at least in some degree in each one of these phases. So front-facing retail makerspace, it's going to happen in phase 1, 2, 3, and we're going to build it out, right? And so I think you asked Supervisor Hannigan about neighborhood. Yeah, so we see that happening in phase 2. Yeah, if we can justify it in phase 1, we would. But again, we think we want to get the site going with these site activators, and then come back in with some of that neighborhood retail.
Appreciate you made that distinction. I think that's one of the concerns we've had in the past in previous discussions about the site where it was proposed that housing would be built first. And I was like, well, that's not quite, was the goal. So, so this is refreshing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so great. So next slide, please. And that's I think all we have today. That's what we call our latest iteration, our Plan 2. I just want to conclude by saying, thank you all for the time that you've committed to this plan and to our team. We remain extremely excited about the site and the opportunities, and we look forward to your comments and moving forward with you.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate the presentation. You do a great job at rolling through all these PowerPoint slides, and your descriptors are wonderful, so I appreciate that. So I want to find out if we have any comments or questions from committee members at this moment. And if not, we'll see if we have any questions from those who are online or in the audience. We do have a card. I don't
Hannigan,
have the
would you like
card.
us to finish the presentation? We have a couple more slides.
Oh, okay.
Do that first. And
You got to tell me these things, Nancy?
hey, no worries. We're just working through the couple more slides for you, and then we'll be able to conclude. So I appreciate the presentation this afternoon. So I'm going to introduce Tom Sinclair. He's going to go through a slide. I apologize, it's hard to read. It says key milestones. And these are the dates that we've been working with the city of Vallejo on potential dates. And again, some of these dates may slide earlier based on sort of resources, but we wanted to show the board, the committee, where we're targeting dates for you to look forward to, because this is a major project. It takes a long time, and we want to do it right. So I'm going to have Tom Sinclair go line by line so you have a full view of the bridge on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Just to kind of add to what Nancy has mentioned, these are just the high-level milestones. There's so much more that we could have put on here, but we wanted to bring these to your attention. And the responsible party column off on the right is not only the party that will take the action that's incorporated in the key milestone, but it's also the party that gave us the number of months or the timing that you see in the target dates. So as we start here, the first step, of course, is to acknowledge Plan 2 as the acceptable basis for the future entitlement applications. That is something that we're asking you an action that we're asking you to take today. Following that action, if you choose to do so, we would go back to the Board of Supervisors and recommend that the existing exclusive rights to negotiate agreement be extended. That agreement was first executed in January. Much progress has been made since January, but more is left to be done, and we'd like to, we'll recommend to the board that the existing ERN be extended. The next step is that, and we've already begun discussions with IRG about entering into a lease agreement. IRG's made it very clear to us that in order to attract the quality tenants that they're looking to attract to this site, they need to be able to show some land tenure and that they have some control of the property. And so our thinking is that a lease agreement would demonstrate that. With regard to the next step, IRG would submit a specific plan amendment to the city for processing in order to be for the specific plan to be consistent with Plan 2 that has been presented today. It would also be considered by the County Board of Supervisors as the master plan, which is what the specific plan represents for the county as we stand today. The city would then process and approve the specific plan amendment in a period of 9 to 12 months. We've assumed 12 months here, during which time First Carbon would complete any additional environmental review that needs to be done in order to support the specific plan amendment. Once the specific plan amendment is in place, the county would be able to enter into what we would call a lease disposition and development agreement, which wraps the ground lease and all of the development terms into one document and provides the rights and obligations going forward of the parties. IRG would then submit a tentative map and the Phase 1 unit plan applications. And the Phase 1, as Mike has described today, really includes the backbone infrastructure and the site activators, the kind of the 1+s that are on the ones and the 1+s. The city has indicated that they could process the tentative map and the Phase 1 unit plan application in a 9 to 12 month period, and we've assumed 12 months. Following that, and this would take some time, IRG would begin to prepare building permit, improvement plans, all of the ministerial applications that need to be submitted to the city. And once submitted to the city, staff has indicated that they could be processed in approximately a 6-month period. That would take us out to March of 2025, at which point IRG would be need a few more months in order to get contracts in place, and we would hope for groundbreaking and ribbon cutting in August of 2025. They believe that a 2-year construction period would be required in order to complete the Phase 1 improvements. Open to any questions that you may have.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Supervisor.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why 9 to 12 months. I mean, that seems like a long time to do some of these things. And so what I'd like to request, at our December 2nd meeting that staff brings back, so we can have a discussion about how we streamline this approval process and what we can do. You got the approval, you got the permits, you got the inspections. Let's take an in-depth look at that. I think the county certainly has the ability to speed that up. I'm assuming the city does too, but we have to have an understanding of how we can do that and what is going to be the best way to sync up with the developer as they bring this forward. Just as I look at it, 9 to 12 months for a specific plan and tenor map, that's excessive. And so I really would like us to look at and have that discussion with the city at our next meeting to really talk about the process, and then the developer has some certainty, because one thing as everybody in this room knows, with development, time is money. And, so I think any of those savings we can build into this, it gives us a better product. And also, as a developer tries to attract some of these uses that we want, if they see this as a streamlined process and they, you got a project you can get done fairly quickly, that's very attractive to developers or companies that would like to locate on the site. Because that's one of the things that deters a lot of the development is the planning process and the length it takes, the time it takes to get a permit. And so I would like staff to agendize that for our next meeting and engage the city and the county planning staffs as to how we can streamline that process.
If I could just add to that comment, we did footnote on the slide, we did have a conversation today with Gillian Hayes, who's the interim city manager for Vallejo, and I mentioned to her in the previous effort that we had with the city of Vallejo, the county actually provided funds for the city to hire consultants to help with the entitlement process. We would also probably do the same thing for this effort to streamline just what you're saying, but we'll continue to work through that dialogue. because we're obviously interested in moving up the timeline as well. So we'll continue that effort, and we'll agendize it for the next meeting. Thank you.
And, you know, I'd like staff to be looking at, you know, if the city is short an inspector, that maybe we help fund that, or we have some overlapping. But this is a very critical piece of moving this forward. And this window of opportunity isn't going to stay open long, and I think we have to take advantage of it. And accelerating the project is going to be one of the advantages we have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I concur with your comments. Councilwoman Du.
Thank you, Chair Hannigan. I also agree with those comments. Certainly, anything that the city can do to expedite the process, I would be supportive of. And I agree that you know, we know the economy we have right now. We know the housing needs and the retail, experiential retail needs, and all of these things are very exciting to see. And so the only thing that I would like to see a little more of is more of, I mean, you've hinted at different economic feasibility factors and analyses. I'd like to see more of that in the presentation, just so to understand, because just having seen so many different development projects, even with this project, that are great artist renderings, and we still are not at groundbreaking. So, you know, just would like to see a little more of that financial data to support market rate absorption, you know, all these different things that support, like for all of the housing products, for example, is it, what kind of price points are you looking at that would make it feasible, that would make it enter into that next phase? Is it market rate, you know, for rent? What are we looking at on those kinds of things? And like I said, yes, absolutely want to see the process expedited. So however the city can help support that, as I look at Mr. Kelly, we would love to see that happen. Thanks.
Great, thank you for those comments. Mayor McConnell?
Yes, thank you. I would point out that the planning department is currently at 50% on city planners in the city of Vallejo. And given the fact that there is difficulty in the marketplace of finding planners, we are definitely going to need some assistance in that area. As respect to the plans, I would like to see a little more specificity going forward. We talked about entertainment venues last time. I saw some vague references to it this time, but nothing specific as to how large. With respect to housing, by that time, no doubt we will have an inclusionary housing element that will mandate affordable housing. But the good news, if you're not aware of it, I suppose, is that in the city of Vallejo, probably 80% of our populace qualifies for moderate or below housing already. So I don't think that's going to be a cumbersome problem, quite honestly. But I'm looking forward to moving this as rapidly as we possibly can, with some measurable time deadlines and measurable results as we move through this process. Thank you.
So those are comments from the dais. I know we have speakers. Alicia, okay.
Good afternoon. If you would like to speak on this item, please press *6 to unmute yourself and state your name if you wish.
And do we have a speaker in the room?
No.
No, okay.
Good afternoon, callers. If you wish to speak on the Solano360 item, please press *6 to unmute yourself and state your name if you wish.
All right. Looks like they left. Maybe they'll come back. But I did want to share that I did do some additional research. I had an opportunity to, as we shared earlier, go to Tin City, but also played Top Golf. I'd never done that before, and it was a lot of fun for somebody who is not a golfer. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for different activities going on there. So that was a great experience. So I appreciate that you're highlighting them in here. I know that is experiential retail, and thoroughly enjoyed myself. So without having public comment, that's what it looks like. Before us, we have 2 items. Now, I don't know if you want to respond to the questions or the concerns that were presented
Alicia, can you move the slide, please, to the next slide? Thank you.
by either Mayor McConnell or any of the other implementation members?
Yeah, I would just say that, as usual, great guidance, great concerns. We hear them. And we look forward to the evolution of this project and coming back with solid answers. And, with regard to sort of the economics of it, for the market economics of it, the plan is set out in such a way that makes the most economic sense at the time we propose to pull the trigger on that component. So, that's why we think it's so important, for example, that we call those things the site activators, right? So, and to make sure we're not doing things prematurely, just for the sake of getting things up, and to make sure we have a really great sense of community at the end of the day. So we can tell you that those 3 site activators are in-demand uses right now that we think are going to garner some of the best rates within the marketplace. So we're excited about that, and we want to make sure that we develop in such a way that maintains the most advantageous economics for those product types. I think, one of the things we should also point out is that I can't remember, it was Justin or Stu in our very first meeting said that this site isn't going to get the highest and greatest land uses, because if it was, you wouldn't like what you saw, and we wouldn't be addressing those 6 components of the specific plan. Mm-hmm. So we are addressing those 6 components and bringing the best economic sustainability that we can to the site, and that's where our focus is, and that's where our vision is, and that's why we've presented what we have in the phasing that we've proposed.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely elements here that are very desirable. I mean, and I love that how you broke it down into the 3, the site, the water, the nature, pedestrian. I mean, it isn't just all business or living, or, it's actually exercise and enjoying the water features and participating with, in whatever activities are occurring out there as a result of the fair or in off-fair times. It seems to me that the flexibility of the field house is going to be tremendous in terms of, I mean, we enjoy that now, but we're talking about a newer building which will have some more square footage and be designed for the 21st century and not 60 years old. So yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I appreciate the water feature as well. I think there's one thing that's outstanding, and that is the financials. And I'm going to look over here to my left and get a sense of when are we going to be having that kind of discussion, or when is that information going to come forward to us? We've talked about financials in the past.
Well, we will do that as a next step item. Right now, we just want to work on the land uses, and then once we figure out the land uses, then we can sort of start doing the calculus, I'll call it, on the financials.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. So it's back in the hands of the committee. We have 2 items. I think we can move them at the same time, if you so desire. So I'm just looking for a motion. All right, great. So we have a motion and a second to move forward. Alicia, you want to call roll?
Supervisor Spearing, Councilmember Dew, Mayor McConnell, and Chairwoman Hannigan.
Absolutely, yes. Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming back. This is wonderful that we have this solidified to a degree, at least the concepts that were presented and how it's all laid out. I don't know if you have any other comments, but I do know our next meeting is slated to begin on Thursday, December 2nd of this year.
My only other comment is I appreciate Supervisor Spearing's comment about timing. That is important. That's critical. You never know what the economy is going to do. And, the uncertainties moving forward, we would like to hit the ground running as soon as we can.
Yeah. I think we can all ditto that. So thank you, Stuart. I appreciate you highlighting that comment. Oh, Justin. I said Stuart, your dad. Oh, all right. With you look just fine, Justin. All right. With that, we'll go ahead and conclude this meeting and look forward to what's going to come ahead. And we'll see the implementation committee together in December on December 2nd. With that, we're concluded.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.